Friends, it's Ranger Russ from the Meigs Nature Center. Very excited to be coming to you today from Haley Farm State Park in Groton or Noank. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody Meigs Nature Center is closed, but tonight at 6:30 we are doing a special frog program live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can watch on either one of those platforms. You can also watch it live on our website, but you won't be able to comment or question if you're watching it on the Facebook. But I really encourage everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel. As soon as we get 1,000 subscribers, I can start doing YouTube mobile. And that's really a big goal of ours, is to be able to do these programs from YouTube and Facebook. Now, Haley Farm, beautiful park, gorgeous day. Temperatures right now, the phone says it's about 67. It feels a little cooler than that. There's a beautiful breeze. I'm in the shade. Absolutely gorgeous. A few wispy clouds in the sky, but this is a fantastic day to be visiting this beautiful park. Not a large park, 267 acres, so not the biggest of our state parks, but it is a beautiful state park nonetheless. Now I'm going to flip the camera. We've actually got a maintenance guy that just pulled up to do some work here at the park, but I want to show you. Now, I mentioned the other day, my grandmother grew up or lived in the house over here, and I used to be able to come for the summers. I would spend a week at a time in the summer visiting this park. So there's going to be some stories from my childhood here, and one of those stories is I did climb this tree as a youngster, and you can see there are lots of people that have climbed this tree. There's some wear on the top of the tree. Okay, so people have definitely climbed this tree. Now, one of the most amazing things about Haley Farm are the stone walls. And Caleb Haley, who the farm is named after, it was his hobby to build stone walls. This is one of the biggest and most perfect stone walls that we have here. It is absolutely beautiful. It has some massive stones. Look at the size of some of the stones in this path on this stone wall. It is absolutely amazing. Okay? Now, he had a ox-drawn cart that he would drag these stones from all over the property and put them out to build these stone walls. Look at the size of some of these stones. As a child, and it was probably right about here, because I remember it was at the beginning of this, they used to keep horses here. There were horses still living here. And walking with my grandmother one day, and I think that my sister was with me, I don't remember, but the big stallion came trotting up and was getting all aggressive. My grandmother put us up on this stone wall and we walked back. Let's show you the length. This is look how gorgeous this stone wall is. We had to walk back to the house, which is back over there, on the top of the stone wall until the horse left us alone. It was a big, scary horse. So you also have to remember that I was just a small child at the time, so that horse probably wasn't as big as I remember it, but, you know, my memory, it was like a Clydesdale. All right, let's head down here. Now, I'm in the shade again so I can see the comments. So the stone walls were put up for livestock. This was a dairy farm. So there are different types of stone walls. Stone walls dividing fields for crops would have been not as tall, not as straight walls, you know, more like just like a stone wall. And the sister says that we were, so it was both were there, and my grandmother had to put us up on the wall, so that's very cool. And yep, somebody got it. Had to use oxen to move these. So here on my left, there's a nice little wetland area. You can see some big ferns in the back. Looks like some cinnamon ferns. There's some other ferns in there. Unfortunately, here we've got an invasive. Let's take a look at this. This is Japanese barberry. That's an invasive. It was used years ago, so anywhere that there was development, you usually find that. We continue down. Now, this bike path is absolutely beautiful, and it is part of a shoreline bike trail here. I think it goes from Mystic to Groton, and this is part of that. But it's also wheelchair accessible, so that's a great thing. Many of our parks are adding in more and more wheelchair accessible trails, which I really like to see. I'm not sure where we got cut off there. Service is not as good as I hoped. Here's a little mountain biking trail. We don't really like to see them going off trail. It does wear down off of the trail, but this is accessible bike path. All right, we're back. Just had to move a little further down the trail. So if it cuts out again, I'm just going to keep on going down the trail. There's actually a long distance that I want to go. So I'm going to the distance, and hopefully you guys would come back pretty quickly. All right, we're back. Let the maintenance guy go by. Again, I'm just going to keep going. If I lose you, I'll keep moving until you pop back in. So we have oak forest here. Big, beautiful, mature oak trees. There's a little birch up here. There's a birch right here. There's also some hickory out here. But this is a climax forest, or working into a climax forest. Still lots of open space, plenty of room for more trees to grow. We've got some more invasives. There's some Asian honeysuckle, more bayberry. Looks like there's a nice maple here. We've got another little cluster of birch trees. So Caleb Haley is who the property is named for. Actually, John Winthrop Jr. owned a portion of the property, and near the end we'll walk through the portion of the property that he owned. He was the first governor of Connecticut, and if you've seen my video on Rocky Neck State Park, he was the person that performed the wedding ceremony at Bride's Brook. So I thought that was an interesting connection. Long before Caleb Haley came into the picture, he bought the property in what year was that? I wrote it down. 1869. He purchased the property and owned it till 1924. Now, he was a fish dealer. That's how he made his money. And he bought this farm. He loved horses. And again, his hobby was building stone walls. So that's what he did on the side of also running a dairy farm here. Now, we should be coming up. Now, as a child, I used to think that this was a massively large park and you could never walk from one end to the other. in like a day trip. But my grandmother would take us out walking through these trails. I've probably been up and down every trail 1,000 times. So one of the places that I just grew to love being out in the woods. Got some lady ferns growing on the side here. Nice, fluffy, soft ferns. Makes it look like you just want to curl up and lay down there. They're like a bed. Some nice, there's a beautiful white oak in the back there. Look at the light, bright bark. Oh, mosquitoes are biting me out here. Here's a hickory. Looks like a mockernut hickory right there. Hickories are great, great seed plants for the wildlife. Ah, my cousin. My cousin also used to spend a lot of time here. So, that's pretty cool. All right, so we're coming up on this gate. We're gonna let the maintenance guy go by us again. Oh, here's a sassafras. Sassafras have different leaves. So this is a 3-lobed leaf, and then they've got a 2-lobed leaf, and then a single lobe right there. Okay, so this one, I call this one the ghost, but the 3-lobed, but in Connecticut it really should be the dinosaur track. That looks like our dinosaur track.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, we're gonna...
Hi, you. What's up?
Hello?
Good.
All right, a little traffic jam there. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. There should be a path off to the left that I want to take. So this bridge leads to Bluff Point State Park, or it's not a state park, it's a coastal management area. Between Bluff Point and Haley Farm, there are 1,000 acres of preserved open space which no one will be able to develop. The reason that the state purchased Haley Farm was to prevent developers. In 1963, the state agreed that they would match any funds raised to purchase this property. The Groton Outdoor Spaces Preservation, what was their title? I'm getting that wrong. But Groton Outdoor Spaces Association and the Connecticut Forest and Park Association started fundraisers, and they raised enough money that in 1970 the park was opened up, July of 1970, as a state park. I wish I knew how much it cost to purchase the park. That one always interests people, but I don't know that number. So the railroad went through really early, and that bridge was not there when this was owned by Caleb Haley. A little, I think it was a shrew, just scurried. Could have been a chipmunk. It just got a glimpse of it disappearing. So New England, there's so much to look at. Looking up, you got to cover the ground as well. This looks like a great place for a snake to be sunning itself, although lots of people out here, so I doubt we're going to run into any snakes on this trail. But I'm always going when I'm out, like trying to see everything there is to see. When this park was purchased, there was actually an article in Life magazine titled Battle Won, because they were able to. So this is great. You can see a sort of a buffer zone between the woodlands and what would be a field, although it's actually a railroad track. But this shows you how naturally trees would encroach out into a field. And we're going to be coming up onto some fields. There's another really good thing to look at over here. Look at this open space. Now, it looks like that's a vernal pool. So that probably has water in the spring and the fall. There's a little bit of greenbrier growing in here. Greenbrier is one of those species that grow into fields. When a farmer stops, one of the things that's going to go. All right, we're back. I cut out here to walk along the railroad tracks for a little bit. And you missed some of the field plants out. So this is back into the park itself. We're back just in time. I really want to show you this. So again, this was a dairy farm, and when the railroad was put in, this was left for the cows. So that's the passage that gets you over to Bluff Point. But that was a cow passage. I imagine it's probably filled in quite a bit because I can't see a cow fitting through this opening. But that's pretty cool. Now, behind me, and we're not really on a path, so I can't really get out and take a look at it. There's a pond back here, okay? And this is supposed to be a trail. Let's go a little bit further and see if we can get closer to the pond. Or should I let's just try this. Looks like a little bit of a path. We'll take this. See if it gets us a better path. So Phragmites is growing in to this pond and turning it into more of a field than a pond. Hopefully we'll be able to correct that at some point. Hopefully we still have some people watching. It's tough with the reception. So this pond is called Racetrack Pond. And the reason for that was Caleb loved horses and racing horses, and he actually built a racetrack with that pond being the center of the track. So I find that fascinating because, let's try and get back up on the actual trail, because there are lots of things that I want to show you guys. One of the reasons that the racetrack thing is fascinating to me is my great-grandparents met here at Haley Farm. My great-grandmother lived in that house at the beginning and worked on the farm, and my great-grandfather he came from New York to work with the horses, and that's how they met. And then he moved up here, and that's how I got here. All right, let's get down. Racetrack Pond does not look like there's much of a pond left there. So Maybe we'll get a better view around here. Yeah, I see a lot of Phragmites over there. All right, let's see if I can find an opening. I'll hold the camera up so you guys can see if there's any pond left over there. I can't really see any. Not a whole lot of open water, so this might be a candidate to do some invasive species removal. All right, we're going to continue along here. So there's another point of significance that I would like to show you. All right. My cousins can chime in with more details about my great-grandparents meeting here if you've got any stories or anything you want to share. So I've seen a lot of old pictures of this area from my family because they were here for a very long time. So we're coming up on what I grew up calling Preacher's Rock. On the map, it's called Canopy Rock, and it's also known as Aunt Jemima's Rock, which I'm not sure how it gets all these names. I can see Preacher's Rock, and you'll get a better view from the other side. This is a glacial erratic, a rock dropped by the glacier, just dropped on top of another, on top of bedrock actually. Now, I really wish we had some graffiti remover out here. Gonna need to clean this rock up, but you can see, a train going by. Woo! So as a boy, they didn't have the big fence that they have now, and we used to put pennies on the railroad tracks and watch them get squashed. But that is not a very wise idea. The trains are moving a lot faster now than they used to. So, again, this is Preacher's Rock. You can see it sort of looks like a pulpit. Canopy Rock, you can see why it's called that. This piece here looks like it broke off from the upper portion. Let's see if I can find a matching point for you. I believe that this piece here was attached up here on the underside. Okay, we're really going to need to remove some graffiti out here. But I always found this fascinating. This rock just looks like it's balanced out here on bedrock. Now, as a boy, I didn't understand how it got here, that a glacier 2 miles thick passed over, and as the glacier melted away or receded, if there were rocks that were picked up by that ice, they were just left wherever they were. But imagine the coincidence, what it would take for this rock to be perched perfectly on top of bedrock. It just amazes me, the coincidence, the chance that it had to be for this to happen. But this was a place, this is probably the place we came to most often when I was a boy. We would come out here, climb all over Preacher's Rock, and then we would go this way. So, and I should probably call it Canopy Rock because that's what it says on the map, but. All right, so we're heading towards Palmer's Cove. And this is the section of the property that was owned by John Winthrop Jr. He owned a section of the property right against Palmer's Cove. Palmer was a gentleman that died at the Battle of Fort Griswold, or the Battle of Groton Heights, which I did an entire program on the Fort Griswold battle. You should go to the Virtual Learning Center on meigspointnaturecenter.org, and you can learn all about the Battle of Groton Heights. It was the last battle before Yorktown. I think it was the last large-scale battle before Yorktown. It was near the end of the war, let's put it that way. All right, so we're going through some fields here. You can see this field is beginning to transition into a forest. We've got some cherry trees beginning to grow here. We've got some sumac. This is winged sumac, not poison sumac. Poison has white berries. This will have red berries. We can go right along here. One of my cousins was actually married in this field too, so you can see there's a lot of family connections to this park with my family. And as a boy, I used to go out and fish in Palmer's Cove. I remember my first real encounter was with a horseshoe crab. Was at the mouth of this cove where there's a brook that flows in. And it had gone upstream, then the tide went out and it got trapped in a little pool, pretty much fresh water at the time. It was a female because it was gigantic and I had to pick it up and move it. All right, I'm hoping that I'm still connected. I'm not seeing any comments, so sometimes that means I'm just not receiving them. Hopefully this is still going out. We can hear the osprey in the distance. There is an osprey nest over there. Here's a more mature cherry tree, providing a little shade. Now out here in the sun, it does feel like it's 76, maybe a little more. We have some milkweed. There's another field species. Really great to have milkweed around because the monarchs need it. Let's see if we've got any milkweed eggs. I'm not seeing any. The eggs look like little gems stuck to the bottom there. All right, the osprey is going nuts over here. I didn't realize how close I was to it. Now that looks like a juvenile osprey sitting there. It should be fledged or flighted by now, but it's still begging for food. And there are adults flying overhead, and I'm seeing some ripples in the water of some feeder fish, little schools of feeder fish going by. Now the osprey are not going to take the small silver sides and killifish, but when the bigger fish move in to try and grab them, then the osprey will go for the bigger fish. We've got more greenbrier right on the shore here. Man, that osprey is really going to town. Now we've got some groundsel here, which is the plant that I never remember the name of it. I always want to call it marsh elder, but it's groundsel. All right, let's keep going. I think this is where my cousin got married, right over here. Got some nice little fruit trees, probably planted here back when this was a farm. Oh, there goes a monarch. Very cool. So it sounds like my dog is at home hearing the osprey call, running all over the house looking for where the osprey is located. That's pretty cool. She is a curious young dog. All right, look at this. I spent a lot of time out here. I remember finding jellyfish here. This was just a beautiful spot. All right. So I'm going to remind everyone that we do have a program coming up this evening at 6:30. It's going to be frogs, mainly frogs. We'll talk about amphibians in general, but mainly frogs. So that's what I have. And you can watch that on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. You can watch it on the website live. But if you want a question or comment, you should watch it on Facebook or YouTube. And I'm really encouraging people to follow us on or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Here's some goldenrod. There are lots of different kinds of goldenrod. This is not seaside goldenrod, which grows along the seaside, but lots of goldenrods. Now, as a child, this field was much more a field. You can see there's a lot of sumac out here, which again is a successional plant. This field is gradually turning into a low shrub area, and eventually trees will grow taller. This may be the plan to allow it to succeed, or we may mow it. It may be on like a 4-year mowing plan to keep it as an open field. I do not know the answer to that, but I know the supervisor, so we can reach out and ask him some questions about this. Now, over here, I'm seeing a post in the ground out in the field. And I'm wondering if there's a way to get to it. I don't think there is, and I'm not gonna go trekking through this undergrowth here. This is more what the field would have looked like, more grasses than cherry and sumac. Lots of fruit trees. I don't know that I noticed the fruit trees as much as a child. All right, we're actually coming up on another little pond. Let's see if we can get there. Now, as a boy, when this was first opened as a park, it actually still had the barn. The old barn was still here. And I remember being told I could never go near the barn because everybody was afraid it was going to fall down. So it probably wasn't in very good condition. But I do remember a barn. And we're going to I will end at the foundation of the barn. So you'll get to see that foundation. So again, Caleb Haley only owns the land up until 1924. So between 1924 and 1970, when the state took over, there were several different landowners, but it was still always called Haley Farm, even with different landowners along the way. And between John Winthrop Jr. and Caleb Haley, there were also additional landowners. So, all right, I'm going to pause in this shade to look at your questions because it's hard to read them when I'm out and about. So, sounds keep going on and off. Hope it's better next time. I have a feeling that it's my signal. I'm actually using a hardwired microphone this time because the wireless, I do have trouble sometimes. But I also was losing transmission quite a bit during this walk. All right, we've got one more section of field, and then we'll come up to the pond and the end of our walk. If people have questions or comments, you can put them up. I appreciate you also putting up where you're messaging from. I always like to see that. Oh, I think that was a cloud sulfur butterfly that shot by like a rocket. They're beautiful little yellow butterflies. Sulfury colored butterflies. And you can't hear the osprey any longer. Lots of crickets in the field though. Not sure if you guys can hear those. I'm hearing some crows way off in the distance. I always like to do that. Stay quiet for a minute and see how many things you hear. Doesn't really work though on Facebook Live. I don't know if you guys can hear everything I can hear. So if you've never visited Haley Farm State Park, I would really suggest you come out. Bring your bicycle, ride the trails, walk the trails. If you're in a wheelchair, you can still access many of the trails, some of the trails. All right, here's something. So many people would just pass by this, but you can see there was a tree here, and the tree was cut down, and this is the remains of the roots of that tree. It just looks cool. Walked over and mowed over and driven over 1,000 times. So we're seeing a lot of sumac out in the field, a lot of cherry, a lot of goldenrod. There's actually a different kind of goldenrod. This is a different species than the last goldenrod. Now, I forget how many goldenrods there are in the world, or in Connecticut even. My college professor would be very upset with me because she used goldenrod for almost every ecology lecture that we had. She could work goldenrod into it. It was very impressive. And different species of goldenrod each time. So, and I had to write many papers on goldenrod. I will never forget Saladago. It's the scientific name for goldenrods. This looks like some Joe Pye weed. Beautiful Joe Pye weed. Wow, look at the color. And I just spooked a bird out. On my left, there was a little bird. Oh, there's a bumblebee. Oh, a whole bunch of bees. Look at them all. They're all on the, oh, my camera. They're all on the sumac. Look at that. Very active. Oh, looks like some honeybees in there. Lots of bumblebees. I'm seeing about 15 different bees right there. Am I pointing at it? I think so. All right, that's really cool. Okay, let's continue. So again, there's Phragmites. There's a little cattail cluster growing right there, one cattail. But Phragmites is growing around this pond and taking the pond away. And that's what Phragmites does. It will, oh darn it, there was a snake. Let's see if I can find it. All right. Let's just bear with me for a moment. I think that it's long gone, but we're gonna see if I can find where it went. Yeah, look at all that cover. That snake just slid right in there and disappeared into probably the poison ivy. Okay, back to Back to Goose Pond here. Now, you used to be able to walk by here and see open water right here. And when it was wet, this little boardwalk that I'm on would actually be in the pond. So this pond is being filled in. This Phragmites is creeping further and further into the pond. It raises the water level of the pond. Wow. That is barely any pond left here. Oh. There we go. Let's see if we can get you to... Ooh. So you can see there's a bullfrog right next to that rock. And look at how tiny this pond has gotten. Again, it may have been bigger because I was small. Let's go around to the other side. We can get a better view. My mother told me that she learned to ice skate on that pond and that she also fell in that pond. Oh, here's a better view. So, yeah, that backside is totally being crept in on by the Phragmites. I also remember it being a little deeper. My cousin saying he used to ice skate on the pond, and that's when my mom fell in. A little rock out there now. I remember being told I couldn't swim in this pond, probably because it's not deep enough and it's just muddy, mucky. But I always used to want to go out to that rock, and I believe once I made it out there without getting in trouble. There's a ton of dragonflies. You're probably not showing up on camera, but there are dragonflies across the way there as well. A question, have they considered removing the Phragmites? Probably. I'm going to say that, you know, the state does have programs for removing Phragmites, but there are so many areas that need it removed. It's probably difficult. Now look here. Here's a little bit. Now I believe that this is scat, and it's got fish scales in it, and it smells fishy. Normally I would say this is an otter. There's a green frog. I don't know if you guys can hear it. So normally I would say this is an otter. It could be something else that eats fish, like a fisher or a weasel. That's really big for either one of those. So I'm gonna say they may have an otter around here. Now an otter is not going to stay in this area, especially this small of a pond, for very long. Once it gets some quick food, it's going to move on. And my cousin says that they used to do bonfires out on the rock. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't remember that when I was coming out here. All right, let's go back over here. So we're almost back up to the parking lot. Let's just let the camera catch up. We're coming right up, and I want to show you this sign. These are great signs, and it's a great reminder for everyone. We have had a lot of storms, a lot of dry summers. So you really need to watch out when you're hiking these trails through these parks. You need to watch out for hanging branches and things like that, especially on a windy day or a day where there's snow load on a tree. So we want you to visit the parks, but we also want you to be aware of what's out there and be cautious about it. All right, so looks like the Fort Trumbull truck is here. This unit is part of Fort Trumbull, Fort Griswold, Bluff Point, and Haley Farm are all together. I think they might also have Barn Island. Not sure though. All right, so there are some foundations over to my left, but we're gonna go right to this one right here that's part of the parking lot. Now, as a kid, the parking lot was not there. There was a little grove of Japanese knotweed, which I thought was bamboo, and I used to chop a tunnel into it and clear a center area for a fort. Now I know that it's an invasive and not a very good invasive. It's a pretty bad invasive. Some invasives are worse than others. But here we've got foundation. Now also, Goose Pond, I read that they used to cut ice out of there and the fishermen would take it out on the boats with them, the ice that they got from the pond. Look at the size of the stones that they used on this foundation. And you can see these are cut stones. These are not natural. These are quarried. They would drill to get this stone. Wow, am I zoomed in? There we go. So they would drill a series of holes, and then they had wedges. They drive the wedges in all the way along here until it popped, and the rock would shear off right where they wedged it. So that's how you get these nice flat stones of the foundation. My dad's on there now. And this was I remember the barn being here. Oh, look, here's some more quarried stone. That is pretty cool. All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this journey down memory lane with me. Haley Farm is a beautiful park. Because it's so close to the shoreline, there's very often a nice breeze off of the water. It also has access to a Bluff Point, which gives you plenty of trails to choose from. Some different habitats. There's the field and then the woodlands as well. And then there's the wetland area, so you can visit lots of different habitats, or you can go out to Bluff and see even more habitats. There's really some nice salt marshes out on Bluff. I will be doing a tour of Bluff at some point, Bluff Point. So, until this evening at 6:30, I'm going to sign off. Remember, you can watch these programs every Tuesday through Friday at 11 o'clock. And I try and do at least one park visit a week, weather dependent, of course. I see some Tree of Heaven in the back there, which is another invasive. We don't really like to see that. But, okay, this is Ranger Russ signing off from Haley Farm State Park. See you this evening.